Now that I had my plans process mapped out, I needed to figure out how it was going to come together. For this, I recreated the blueprint on Excel. After recreating it on Excel, I was able to enter some simple formulas to help me to know how much to allocate to each account. I would enter the amount the business made, and as I entered it, it would update those amounts in that account. I could update this amount on a weekly, bi-weekly, or monthly basis. Depending on what the business made, I would enter that amount here. Once that amount was entered, I can decide what percent will be allocated to each of these accounts. If I wanted to allocate to the family bank, say 25%, 15% to the Roth, 15% to the health savings, and the rest into dividends, it would tell me the exact amounts I needed to transfer to each of these accounts. And those amounts would be updated in the blueprint in each account. Even though the business itself is being funded from my current job, it takes a lot of capital to do covered calls and cash covered puts. This is where writing down goals really mattered, because depending on how much money I wanted to give to myself, it would make a difference on how fast it would take to reach my goals. For example, I could always decrease the Roth, say, to 5%, the HSA to 5%, and dividends to 25%. Doing this would leave 40% or $600 to be reinvested back into the business. This reinvestment back into the business, along with the income coming from my current job, will produce more capital to write more calls and sell more cash covered puts. In the upcoming videos, I'll get more into each account, how I opened them, the rules and restrictions on these accounts, how much I could fund in each of these accounts. Throughout the years, there was a lot of experimenting with the flow of this blueprint. I did come up with what I think is the best practice that worked for me. That is, in the dividend account, after researching which stocks I wanted to use for dividends, I would buy one of each. Once deciding which stock next to get to 100 shares, I would borrow from my life insurance policy and buy 99 shares of the stock. I could then write covered calls on the shares. The money the covered calls produced from the dividend account, all dividends I was being paid, all covered call money the business was making, as well as my checks from work, will all go back into the life insurance policy to pay back the loan. Once that policy was paid back, I then repeated the steps for the next dividend stock. I would borrow the amount needed to buy 99 shares of the stock from the life insurance policy. I would then write covered calls from this stock as well as the previous stock I had bought 100 shares from. The money these calls produced, as well as the dividends I was paid, all covered call money from the business, my checks from work, will all go back into the policy to pay off the loan. Now understand, this practice came after building up the business account and the life insurance policies to a certain level. Now, I know the question may come up in people's mind, what do I do if I need a new car, or want to go on vacation, or have an emergency? The process did not change. The act of borrowing from the policy stayed the same. In essence, I was becoming my own banker. I borrowed money from the policy to buy 100 shares of a stock. But if at any time I needed to, say, fund my Roth IRA for the year, then that $6,000 or $7,000 would come from the policy and go into the Roth IRA instead of buying 100 shares of a stock. I then would use the call money from the dividend account, the dividends from that account, the call money from the business, my checks from work, and put it all back in the policy to pay it off. If I needed a new car, the policy would buy the car. Then, all income being produced would pay back the policy. It worked the same for whatever I needed. If I wanted to increase the amount being used in the business to generate more capital from the calls and puts, I would direct the policy into that account and follow the same process of paying back the loan. What about day-to-day bills? My checking account was kept at a certain amount. That is, the amount needed to pay monthly expenses like my mortgage. All other monthly expenses I would then put on a rewards credit card. Whatever amount I took from the checking account as well as the entire balance on the credit card, I would pay back in full, then redirect all of the rest of the income back into the policy. Setting up these accounts, learning the rules and restrictions of each account, and funding the accounts took time. One of the books I read while going through all of this is The One Thing by Gary Keller. It helped me to stay focused and not get overwhelmed. Life throws a lot at me, and being able to balance all of it is important to me. By focusing on one thing at a time, it relieved a lot of stress. And as I learned that some things are not as important as others, it began to build a confidence in me that just grew stronger over time. In the upcoming videos, I'll start going over my process when starting this journey, as well as how I open these accounts.